Do you poll small groups for reading? How do you choose the right materials to keep all students engaged and learning? In today's episode, I'm going to be walking you through my go-to recipe for planning small reading groups. These are activities that are not only effective, but they are also fun. Let's go. Hey, special educators. I'm Jennifer from Positively Learning. Welcome to the Special Educators Resource Room. If you're like me, you're always looking for ways to save time and streamline your work. That's why this podcast was created, to give you the systems and solutions you need to get your time back. Tune in for tips, tricks, and tools that will help you manage your workload and make the most of your time. Whether you're brand new or experienced, all are welcome in the Special Educators Resource Room. Hey, special educators, it's Jennifer from Positively Learning. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, we're talking all about your small reading groups. You don't have to take notes during this episode because I put all the information together in a blog post. I will link it in the show notes. Just for fun, let's use the analogy of cooking. Choosing the right resources for both your small groups and independent learning centers is like picking the perfect recipe. You spend time researching, and yes, Pinterest totally counts. You're gathering your ingredients and you're following a plan. And just like cooking, you have to mix in a bit of common sense and make adjustments along the way. For reading small groups, I've developed a recipe, and it's based on nursery rhymes. Those traditional rhymes and little songs like Humpty Dumpty and Itsy Bitsy Spider and Little Miss Muffet. These nursery rhymes aren't just fun, they're actually some of the best predictors of early reading success for young children. As always, I want this information to be as helpful as possible. So although I'll be talking about nursery rhymes for these resources, feel free to substitute if you have something else in place or something that you have to use in your classroom. Let's dive into this recipe. The first step is the hook. I like to start by modeling the reading and using, of course, a lot of inflection and enthusiasm. This is going to draw students in and make them feel excited about the rhyme. If you're using familiar rhymes like Hickory Dickory Dock and Little Bo Peep, you may hear a lot of, I know this, I've heard this before, and that's exactly what you want. That familiarity breeds confidence, especially when you're working with young learners who are just building their phonemic awareness and their early reading skills. After the hook, we move into the warm-up, and please do not skip this part. The warm-up's a great way to set up students for success. I recommend choosing a phonemic awareness, like rhyming word activity, that you know your students are going to ace. Why? Because you want them to associate reading with success. When students feel confident, they're going to be much more willing to tackle those harder phonological awareness skills, like identifying different sounds and building on new vocabulary. It can be very tempting to use this time for progress monitoring. Students are engaged. You can check for understanding, but I highly encourage you keep these skills at students' independent levels. This is just a very quick warm-up. The goal of this warm-up is to gather everybody, get them ready for the lesson ahead, and build that confidence. So far, we've done the hook and the warm-up. These are very quick activities. Now we're going to move into shared reading. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can use a mini book. You can use a pocket chart to display a rhyme. The most important thing is that every student gets to actively participate. Shared reading is where students are really going to start picking up the patterns of the sounds, the story structure of the rhyme. It's fun. It's engaging. It's a way to introduce key literacy skills while keeping it a low-pressure environment. I prefer using a pocket chart over the mini book for shared reading because it's so easy for all students to be actively involved. They can be pointing to words and highlighting different phonemes. The mini book is also great, but I think that it can be used later, whether you're pulling a small group or you can add it to independent centers or even send it home. Now let's talk about retell, my favorite part. Once students are familiar with the rhyme, it's their turn to take the lead. With nursery rhymes, this could look like unscrambling sentences. Students are moving around word cards to build sentences taken directly from the poem. You could also use pictures from the poem to retell the main events. Both of these activities not only reinforce the rhyme, but they also help with language development and sequencing, two key components of early literacy. Let's quickly recap the steps we've taken so far in this reading recipe. We started off with a hook and then moved into the warm-up. Then we talked about shared reading and retell. After retell comes the reinforcement phase. This is where we take everything we've learned and we can spread this out over the next few days. It's not a one and done situation. So we might be revisiting some of the activities we already mentioned, like the pocket charts, the scrambled sentences, or the mini books. This gives students the repetition they need without ever feeling like they're stuck doing the same activity over and over again. And the best part is it helps turn those tricky words into real, meaningful language that fits into their developing vocabulary. Finally, we move everything into independent centers. At this point, students are familiar with the rhyme and they practice the skills in a group setting. Now they're ready to work on their own. You can also include extra tasks like phonics and phonemic awareness skills. This way, students can keep practicing while you're pulling and working with other groups. And that's it. That was the recipe for successful small reading groups, and my example used nursery rhymes. Number 1, you're going to hook your students with a fun, familiar rhyme. Number 2, you're going to give them a warm-up activity that guarantees success. Number 3, you're going to use shared reading to explore the rhyme together. 4, let students take the lead with retell activities. 5, spread out the learning with reinforcement activities that might take several days. And 6, move these activities into independent centers to encourage continued practice. And that's it. What do you think? Hopefully, as you were listening to this breakdown of steps, you were already thinking about activities you have access to that you could use for your own reading recipe. If you're starting from scratch, I encourage you to check out my full nursery rhyme literacy bundle. It's 36 different nursery rhymes that can mix and match, which means you have 36 weeks of small group instruction. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you found this episode helpful, please hit subscribe and share it with another educator. I look forward to talking with you soon in the Special Educators Resource Room. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm dying to ask, what'd you think? Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe buttons so that you never miss an episode. You can find the show notes and links for everything mentioned in this episode at positivelylearningblog.com. See you next week for more special education solutions.